Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now? We're having a party in the Champions League, or are we? The squad has been announced, and it is full of surprises and talking points. And one thing that's definitely lost, I think, in the initial reaction and the aftermath of the squad announcement is just, configuring the squad to meet UEFA regulation. So, in the video today, we'll be looking at the squad, how it sits, why it was selected, and what it tells us for who is going to be available for the Champions League group stage this season at any point in the video today. If you do, laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel. We are pushing for 10,000 subscribers, and we cannot do that without your support, guys. So if you do enjoy the content here, please do subscribe to the channel for more stuff like this. Hit a like button and jump into the comment section and let me know, now that you've seen the squad, how are we going to actually do in the Champions League group stages this season? And let's just get stuck straight into it. Now, we're only allowed to register 25 players for the Champions League, and there has to be a set criteria. We're looking for 8 players that have been brought up in Scotland, and more specifically, 5 of them that have came through the Celtic ranks. We do get a B list to cover us for injury scenarios that might happen as the group stage unfolds, and that kind of thing is almost like a reserve list, and some players did feature on that. But within the remaining 17 spots, you've got to think about the quality of squad we've got and the amount of additions that we've made in the summer transfer window, particularly on deadline day. Nat Phillips, Bernardo and Luis Palma all coming in. We've said on the Sorare CSC live streams and on the flagship podcast, it feels like every week relentlessly, that the quality in a lot of similar positions is very deep, but in some areas it's very much lacking. And going into the transfer window, left back, goalkeeper, there was a few different positions that we thought would need addressed, would need some maintenance, would need some financial transfer fee capital injected into it to make us competitive on the Champions League. And it does appear, with the omissions that we've had in the squad, that the business we've done has not been satisfactory. If you checked out the video that went out earlier this week on the channel, where I've broken down the squad and went through the transfer window to see exactly where we're sitting and where I think the standing of the overall squad is in the kind of roadmap that the powers that be at Celtic must have laid out, then be sure to check that out. But putting all of that context to one side and just looking at this as a Champions League group stage squad, it does leave a lot to be desired. We do see a firm 25-man squad here. Now, I've kept Phillips, Bernardo and Palma in grey because I just don't really know where to really put them on the map here, as it were, and really what their standing is going to be in Brendan Rodgers' Celtic this season. So there's still kind of unknown elements in the squad dynamic as a whole, and the guys that have been Scottish trained, I've got one little star next to him. We've went with the best 11 in green, but if they're not in the best 11 then they're yellow. And equally, for the Celtic trained players, they've got 2 stars next to them, or if they're not in the best 11, they're also coloured in black. And the guys that don't make the best 11, that don't qualify for any of that criteria, are just in white. Easy enough. Now, I think at first glance, it does appear that we have good depth in a lot of different positions here when you consider the injuries that we currently have in the defence. But on further examination, you quickly see that Bain is the only goalkeeper actually in the squad, which signifies that he is clearly going to be on the bench for all the Champions League games, aka understudy, backup, plan B to Joe Hart. Now, I love a Cruyff turn in the 6-yard box as much as the next guy, but that just cannot be the plan. In all due respect to Scott Bain and everything, I think we know this status in the squad is the merit he's really bringing to the squad, and it's not to genuinely be number 2 in the squad. So I think that does highlight that the goalkeeper department is still missing a face. It's still missing a person. It's definitely not Benjamin Siegrist, and that is at 100% a position that I expect all the energy at Celtic and the transfer, the scouting, talent ID department to be going into, to make sure in January next summer, whenever the best deal presents itself over those next 2 windows, that we get the top guy available with the war chest we've got, really, no matter what the budget. The second thing you'll be quickly drawn to is Greg Taylor is the only designated recognisable left back in the squad. Now, Taylor, I am a massive fan of Greg Taylor. Last season and the season before, I thought the guy took his game to new levels every week. It felt like it was incredible. I and a lot of other Celtic fans had the reservations, had the fears that in Brendan Rodgers' football, maybe he wouldn't quite shine as brightly. And it does seem that way in the early stages of the season. And all that being equal, even in Ange Ball, there was a worry that potentially at Champions League level, maybe he just doesn't, he wouldn't have it for us. So that's something that it feels like if Bernabe's not making it into this squad, and we'll go into the reasons around that in a second, but if Greg Taylor is the only secure left back here, then think it tells you where Rodgers sees Bernabei in the squad, and equally similar to goalkeeper, that you've got to imagine all the powers that be at Celtic are putting their energy into filling this spot with the best candidate available in the January or following summer transfer window. Now, you could make an argument to say Scales is going to be the backup left-back option here, squad-wise, and you can use that versatility to then negate and discount Bernabei, and maybe Bernabei gets a wee bit more of a prominent role domestically. I know we've not got League Cup, but we do have Scottish Cup, and if you look at some of the fixtures between some of the more difficult games, having somebody like Bernabei who knows, hey, I can just play 90 minutes at the weekend, Taylor can chill out, then maybe that thing comes into play. But to Stonewall Bernabei out the squad, where even if he was to be amazing, imagine Bernabei went up a couple of levels over the group stage and we can never actually use him for the last game of the group, or game 5, game 4, some of these crunch matches where it will be everything on a knife edge. Feels like a bold play if Bernabei isn't being discredited in the squad standing by this, if that makes sense. Because I reckon Scales, after being man of the match in the derby, I don't think you can drop him. That's why I make him best 11 at the moment, along with Carter Vickers. And I do think Phillips, of course, will play while Carter Vickers is out injured. I don't think the big man's too far away, and it will be really down to Phillips' performances in this situation here to stay in that position. Maybe Lagerbielke could come back in for here, or even when Carter Vickers does return, if Phillips... I've heard people say, English people in England, Liverpool fans and whoever else this guy's played for, say that he is the second best defender now at the club behind CCV. So if he does impress enough, maybe the defence then becomes, for a while we're waiting for everyone else to get fit and acclimatised, maybe it becomes Phillips and CCV. But I do think, as it stands now, that's probably the way the manager sees it. Welsh, of course, could play in the absence of Vickers, but his injury, along with Navrojic's, who has also been listed out here. Now, I do think with Lagerbielke and Scales and Phillips all being available for match day 1, certainly, and then maybe we're hoping we see Carter Vickers and Welsh return for potentially match day 2 and 3 in the Champions League, then we can really pick our best defence possible. And in which case, because we've got to take Gus, maybe these injuries don't recover as well as you want. You do have to think about doomsday scenario here, and what if there's a reoccurrence in injuries, what if there is a further injury to an additional player, etc. I think maybe Navrojicic, if you don't imagine he's going to be fit and available to maybe match day 3, match day 4, then his spot in the squad is a bit of a luxury pick, because you are taking Vickers, who's already injured, you're already taking Welsh, who's injured, you're really forced to take Welsh no matter what. And as you can see from the colour coding here, everyone who's left out, none of them, with the exception of James McCarthy, is eligible to make any difference to the criteria itself. So again, we might have had the luxury of bringing Navrojicic into this squad had the UEFA rules not being what they are, or should we have somebody more impactful on the squad that could fill the criteria than what we see further up the pitch in Mikey Johnson, who is currently also injured but rumoured to be coming back to training like kind of newish. But even at that, if he is like third choice, maybe left wing, got to imagine Dyson's number 1. Palma is rumoured to be in this mould, in this kind of position of the pitch. So we'll see where he actually comes to the fore. But I don't see him making an impact on the actual group stages, maybe as much as a fit Navrojicic could for match day 6 or match day 5, if we had the flexibility to include him in there. But I do think, considering the amount of defenders we've managed to get on, we are really leaning on the versatility of Scales, and maybe even the versatility of Lagerbielke. Lagerbielke looks decent enough, and I don't know, the job you would maybe ask Scales to do at left centre-back. I don't know if you could maybe ask, maybe Gus to do that, or I don't know, maybe Alistair Johnson. There's a few different variations in here where maybe you could play Johnson at left-back and Ralston at right-back. There's a few different versatility options in here that maybe cover you a wee bit to maybe then get the extra player in here, the extra centre-back, to cover for the situation we've got. In midfield, but is where the surprise continues to rumble on, because McGregor, of course, walks into the team, as does Matt O'Reilly and Rio Hatate, who's oddly listed on the UEFA website as being a defender, would you believe? But Thiago Holm comes straight into this team. Now, considering, again, he doesn't fit any criteria, I find that quite reassuring for him as an individual player in the squad. Similar to Paulo Bernardo, who's not had any impact on the team whatsoever, and with the amount of midfielders we have in the squad, there's still a lot of the jury's out in terms of what is his role going to be, what impact can he bring the team, and where do we see him making that impact. So the fact that he also makes the squad, although he fits no criteria and he's not kicked a ball yet, definitely says something about his standing in the squad. Similar to Tomoki Iwata. Now, Iwata seems to be, on the CSC live stream on Monday night, we had hashtag Justice for Iwata going out, and he's in the squad, so He's definitely above Quan. He's definitely above McCarthy. He's definitely in the reckoning of the squad quite clearly. So I don't know how we see the Iwata situation now that he's been declared. But of course, Turnbull comes in and he's qualified as being Scottish trained. And otherwise, I think the midfield, like if Iwata was playing, I think that midfield actually looks really good. For if Bernardo can be a Matt O'Reilly level guy that can play like Rio Hatate, because I think Bernardo's a bit bigger stature, then he could be really effective also. We know what Turnbull does. Maybe Turnbull could be effective also. Probably not from the start, but maybe in the last 5 minutes, 10 minutes of a match here and there. He can definitely, he can hit a ball, definitely. There's no two ways about it. But Iwa's not had a kick. So to have him in the squad as being basically the main defensive midfield rotation option, tactical in-play change option as well, does confuse me. Now, Odenholm has come in and he can play into this kind of transition defensive midfielder where, kind of similar to McGregor when he's playing alongside Hatate, the kind of jobs that they take up together where they'll come back to cover defence, play a couple of passes. Maybe they can cover 10 yards and then play a slicing ball and do that kind of thing. So Holm can maybe fill in these kind of voids in the match also if he was ever to feature. Well, any features, I suppose he's in the squad. Be very likely with the amount of substitutes it's given. And then up front, I don't think there's any real surprises beyond the Mikey Johnson one. Of course, Kyogo, Dyson and Abada, who's currently injured. And then behind that, Palma, £3.5 million signing along with Lagerbielke and Novroche, who does miss out. Obviously, one of the big transfers this summer. Yang, and then Forrest, of course, club legend, and he does the same. He does the best qualification for us, so of course he's going to come in. And Forrest's place in the squad is fine, I think, but when you've got Forrest and Johnson basically doing the same role in the squad, being the extra kind of wing option, it does maybe limit you a little bit. Tilio, Kwon, McCarthy, Bernabe, Yuki Kobayashi, Novroche, and Ben Siegrist are all those first-team squad players that miss out on registration, and there's a few of them that are listed, I think, on the B list, Siegrist being one of them. And that squad doesn't fill me with that much confidence going into the group stage versus, like, looking at the squad overall, I feel like the injury situation has maybe limited our decision-making and us being able to get our optimal squad out, because again, Feyenoord is the last match day of the group, and depending on what Bernabe's contribution is going to be domestically, depending on the recovery that we get for Navroche, I'm thinking maybe we get into the most important game of the group stage and maybe one or two of our best defensive options for whatever they might give us, because Navroche's looked really good progressing the ball and passing, and I think Scales has looked great as well, don't get me wrong. Lagerbielke's looked fine. I suppose actually none of these players are actually proven at Champions League level, so I don't think we're really gaining or losing much as I'm saying this out loud from any of them individually. It's not like Navroche's like, oh, he's played group stages before or he's got a lot of international caps. I don't think necessarily any of these guys individually bring a real difference. It's really for Carter Vickers. We really need Carter Vickers back in situ, and we need the best partner available for him. And I guess maybe we've got enough options there between Phillips, Scales and Gus and Welsh when he becomes fit again, that we would have enough options there to make sure we've always got a good partner with Carter Vickers and we can make sure he recovers from injury appropriately. But yeah, I do worry that midfield is so reliant on Hatate. I would also say it's so reliant on McGregor. I think if McGregor was, not available for a match or was neutralised in a match for whatever reason, maybe early yellow card, and sometimes these things happen in away games, or players then don't really get the opportunity to, anyway, any number of things can happen, and I don't know, I just think we're maybe too reliant in the centre of the pitch still. But again, we do have a bit of an unknown quantity, a bit of an unknown element here with Bernardo. So I think the main thing the team has going for it is it's clearly got buckets of goals in it. I think Kyogo has really got a huge Champions League itch to scratch, and I think he's going to be the main man for us. And between him and Dyson Maeda, I know Abada's out now for probably the first 2 matches, if not 3. But I think those two guys will be really itching to make a big impact on the Champions League group stage. And that opens up an opportunity for somebody like Yang to come in. Maybe Forrest can live a bit of his best life again. And I'm going to say this now, I would really hate to see Dyson forced over onto the right to allow Palma into the left. I think Dyson, although he's not got much finesse or much technical grace around, his final ball and whatever at times, I think he's very much earned the respect to be in his best position. And Palma, let's try and fit him in best to the rest of the squad and use him to fill in for Abada in his absence, potentially, is what I would suggest. But anyway, I don't know anything that Palma brings. Maybe he's going to even play in this kind of role here, perhaps in the absence of an Hatate. Maybe that's it. Who bloody well knows at this point. And I think O, as long as fit and available, gives you a great option from the bench. Is a different type of forward. And you could even leave Kyogo on the pitch. You could maybe even put Kyogo into one of these wider options. And with how deep Brendan has had Kyogo drop in to get on the ball already this season, I wouldn't be surprised if he even could fill in technically in one of these midfield positions. And who knows? There's a lot of versatility in the squad, but I do like, having O and Kyogo obviously fit, available, and registered, and maybe Turnbull is kind of like also a tertiary kind of forward also. I think down to the goals that we'll be able to score alone, I still think we've got a really strong possibility of finishing second in the group as long as we can get positive results against Lazio, of course, and we start off the group really well next Tuesday against Feyenoord. But the number one objective is being in Europe after Christmas, and that just means finishing third. And like I mentioned, the opening game of the group stage away to Rotterdam at Feyenoord is a brilliant curtain raiser, and I'm really looking forward to it. On screen there now is some other stuff that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I'll see you in the comment section. Hail, hail.